What is going on, Bills Mafia? Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. This one coming to you live, of course, Wednesday at 8, right here on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. I really appreciate all the love and support you guys tuning in each and every Wednesday. Got a great show in store for you guys, piggybacking off of a discussion, piggybacking off of a topic that was talked about last night on the K-Gun Report. I'm going to give my own grades for Brandon Beane's 2027 or 2017, 2018 to present day in terms of Buffalo Bills NFL drafts, grading Brandon Beane's Buffalo Bills NFL drafts. Now, I will say that that's a little bit misleading. I'm only going to discuss the first round NFL draft picks by Brandon Beane. So we'll edit that. Grading Brandon Beane's Buffalo Bills first round NFL draft picks. Of course, I want you guys to chime in and fire away some comments in the comments section below. This episode is brought to you by 26shirts.com for all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs. Go to 26 Shirts. You'll find yourself a great item, whether you want to add to your Buffalo Bills apparel needs, whether you want to add to your Sabres, your Bandits, your Bisons. We're in the full swing of things as far as baseball goes, which is much to my delight. Just got done watching a little bit of the Sox on MLB TV, which I'll be doing that pretty much the entire summer. So let's go pick by pick, player by player, in the first round of Brandon Beane's draft history. Now, Brandon Beane's first NFL draft with the Buffalo Bills, I think this is a big misconception here. But Sean McDermott, when he came in, it was 2017. We had Doug Whaley in that general manager title, right? And Sean McDermott was here as well. They traded down the Kansas City Chiefs famously. That was when they took Tre'Davious White. So Brandon Beane, grading Brandon Beane and what he was able to do in 2018 is really where I want to start. Now, it goes without saying, but the most impactful pick, I think, in recent Buffalo Bills draft history, in the history of the Buffalo Bills, was the best pick that Brandon Beane has ever made. The best, arguably one of the best players to ever wear a Buffalo Bills uniform. And we'll start off with the grade on Josh Allen. I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but the MVP, the 2024-2025 NFL MVP, Josh Allen, drafted right out of Wyoming. You go back into the archives of a lot of these podcasts that have existed for a long time, myself included. I started my show in 2016, which was a Super Bowl preview show. My first episode previewing the Panthers versus the Denver Broncos. That was the first podcast episode that I had ever done under this banner, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. And we were in that Tyrod Taylor, Rex Ryan era. That was kind of the era where my show started. I was on some podcasts, but I wanted to start my own. That was when the show really got going. So I've been at it for a long time. And the cool part about that is I can boast when I'm right. I can also be on the hook when I'm wrong. And I can go down in history as a guy that really wanted the Buffalo Bills to select one of two quarterbacks. And one of those two quarterbacks they picked, one of those two quarterbacks is the face of their team, is the National Football League MVP, and that is Josh Allen. The other one, oddly enough, was drafted into a really bad situation, bounced around a little bit before finding the right fit for him, and that was none other than Sam Darnold. I liked Darnold a lot coming out of USC. I liked Josh Allen a lot coming out of Wyoming. A lot of skill, a lot of traits that this league has tried to somewhat emulate with some of the quarterbacks that are looked for by other teams. Comparisons will be thrown out there whenever there's a quarterback with an inkling of success, and then there's another quarterback picked in similar size, similar stature. They will then compare that quarterback to the, before mentioned Josh Allen. It's already being thrown around with guys like Drake May being looked at as comparable players, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's safe to say that there is no comparison for any quarterback in today's NFL to Josh Allen. It's very hard for me to even look back to like the golden era of the National Football League and look at Josh Allen and compare him to really anybody. If it wasn't for a guy by the name of Vic Fangio, I feel like John Elway's name would be even tougher to throw around, but he threw that name out there. John Elway, Josh Allen-esque. I'd say he's a hybrid. Allen is, of course, between John Elway and Brett Favre. That's what I would say. In terms of NFL all-time comparisons type stuff. So that's what I would say as far as Allen's comparison. What has this guy not done in this league already? He's done pretty much everything that you've wanted to do except play in a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. Those are the only two things that I think are left for Josh Allen to do. Hopefully that does happen sooner rather than later, because as you play 7 years in this league, you realize how quickly 7 years went for a player like Josh Allen, who is now heading into his 8th season as the franchise quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. But an A-plus pick, Buffalo traded up not once but twice to move up to the 7th overall selection of the 2018 NFL Draft to take none other than the Wyoming gunslinger Josh Allen. So start off with that pick, the first pick that he ever made, hit it out of the park, could not have gone any better, could not have been a better pick for the Buffalo Bills in Josh Allen. So going into the next portion of the first round picks by the Buffalo Bills, this was one that I was really excited for. This was one that I felt like at the time checked off 2 boxes. I put out top 5 positional rankings every single season when it comes to the NFL draft season, of course. Rankings for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, linebackers. And this linebacker in particular, I had as the number 1 linebacker in the class outside of Roquan Smith, and that was Tremaine Edmonds, who Buffalo did select with what was the 16th overall selection in the 2018 NFL Draft. So grading Tremaine Edmonds is tough because obviously he's no longer a member of the Buffalo Bills, and he hasn't been for a couple years now. But I will tell you, when this pick was made, I thought that the reasoning behind it made a lot of sense. Here he is now in what is his 8th year in the National Football League, and he'll be age 27. Drafted as a 19-year-old, started for the Buffalo Bills 15 games as a 20-year-old, two-time Pro Bowl player in 2019 at age 21 and at 2020 at age 22. So age 23, 24, he signs a monster deal with the Chicago Bears. They had a ton of cap space at the time. Buffalo did not. So, it's one of those situations where salary cap wise, this was just a cap guy that they could not keep, that they knew was going to command quite a lot of money. But I'm grading this pick a B-. Now you'd think, okay, he was a starter every single year in Buffalo, worked really well for Buffalo to be able to take him. And he was obviously picked at a really young age, but I think the production was statistically there. But I don't know if X's and O's wise, if Tremaine Edmonds was essentially the best fit for Sean McDermott's defense, much like I believe Terrell Bernard is right now. You look at the size difference. Edmonds 6'5", 245, runs like a deer. but in a 4-3-5, a guy that is 6'2", 230 pounds fits better. He's not too long. He's not too gangly. He can plug certain holes and find good coverage matchups for himself. That is Terrell Bernard. And I think that's what's made Bernard so successful as a third, fourth round pick, starting linebacker for the Buffalo Bills. And that's what made Tremaine Edmunds, dare I say it, a little bit expendable, a little bit of a player that they felt comfortable not paying and comfortable seeing him go to another team because they knew what they had in waiting. That was really important. So that's how I would grade Tremaine Edmunds. Obviously, he's a starting linebacker in this league. Plenty of room to grow in comparison to even where he was at a year ago with Chicago. Did really, really well for them, but took the money, got a long-term deal, and wasn't really looking at the long-term viability of his situation here in Buffalo. Felt like he took a bag and took a big paycheck, and I'm not going to knock him for that. It's just economics of the National Football League. So that's my grade for Tremaine Edmunds, and one that I think is very fair, given that he had only played here for 5 seasons, but once on a fifth-year option, and there was some reason to believe that there's a little bit left to be desired, I think, from what he was able to do here in Buffalo. So next up, the 2019 first-round draft choice by the Buffalo Bills. He was a top 10 pick and remains a Buffalo Bill till this very day. So you know that obviously things went considerably well, right? But I think for where this player was projected to be, what this player was projected to do, given the tools athletically, I think it's been good from this player, but it hasn't been great. And that is Ed Oliver. Now, I love Ed Oliver. I think he's got a lot of tools, a lot of talent. Drafted in 2019. I remember talking about this guy in 2016 when he was at Ole Miss. Player that I thought, man, whoever gets him, he reminded me of like a mini kind of tool-wise Aaron Donald. And those were a lot of the comparisons that he got in college to the NFL. But Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive tackles, if not the best defensive tackle of his era, definitely one of the best of all time. Completely different body type, completely different skill set in terms of what they bring to the table. Ed Oliver, 6'1", 287 pounds. I remember Aaron Donald at his peak was, around a 285, but was seen as more of a physical, faster D tackle than what Ed Oliver was. But I will tell you that I think a lot of this is due to the position. A lot of the lack of best results possible is due to the position of D tackle. You almost have to have a qualified guy next to you at that position in order to really show your true colors as a player. And Buffalo lost Harrison Phillips, who was picked a couple years prior to Ed Oliver, actually a year prior, in the 2018 draft class in the 3rd round, who was expected to be a huge piece of the puzzle, but he went and took a big money deal with the Minnesota Vikings, which was a big loss to this defense, a loss that I think, they were hoping that Dwayne Carter this past draft could fulfill that role. It's been very hard for them to find a player that would fulfill the role of a Harrison Phillips. That was no doubt about it, a huge loss. But I look at Ed Oliver as a player that is a big part of Buffalo's present and is expected to be a big part of Buffalo's future. Just thus far, I can't give it a B plus. I think he's been better than a B minus, but he's not quite an A. So I give it just a flat B rating, flat B grade. I think that is pretty fair if you ask me. So I expect big things from Ed Oliver from a growth standpoint. That's what you really hope for within this defense. Expected to take that next step continuously to see where he goes, and that is going to be very, very interesting in the coming years here. This next year after that. So The next pick was during the pandemic, the 2020 NFL draft. And in the first round, felt like the Buffalo Bills wanted to bring the boom, bring the pressure. Year prior, actually 2020, they had drafted AJ Epinesa with the second round pick, didn't have a first due to the Stephon Diggs trade. So 2021, who do they look to add? Well, could never have too many pass rushers in this league. After they took AJ Epinesa in the second, they went on to take Gregory Rousseau in the first round of the 2021 draft. Now, I remember Rousseau very vividly at Miami a year prior, had a great junior season, senior season, not quite. He opted out his senior year. So there was a lot to wonder about when the Bills picked him in the first round. Okay, is this guy going to come in a little bit green? He was green. He did not have the polish that you would want a SEC first round, or Miami Hurricane type pass rusher to have. There was a little bit of growth opportunity there for Greg Rousseau to continue to grow and to continue to get better. And I don't think we've seen the absolute best of Greg Rousseau yet. That's just how scary this kid's potential is. And he just signed a long-term contract extension with the Buffalo Bills. But looking at the numbers, right? Looking at the year-to-year production, I would say that you could look at things from a just a sack perspective. Last year, 8 sacks. In his career, he's got 25 sacks. So he's got 25 sacks in 4 years. That's not too bad. That's about 6 sacks, a little more than 6, almost 7 sacks a year. That's not too shabby, right? That it could be better, could be worse. The advanced statistics have him continuing to projection to be even better. And 4 sacks his rookie year, 8 sacks his second year, 5 his third, and 8 this past year. I thought this past year was one of his best years, but his harsh critics say that he has disappeared in the playoffs. Well, it's not a one-man, show at the defensive end position. A lot of defensive players, unfortunately, have disappeared, for lack of a better term, in the playoffs. Rousseau's one of them. Ed Oliver is another. But statistically, skill set wise, where does this guy, level up to? Where does he project to be? And it's really hard to use words like that because projection, is not reality. You're guessing. You're playing a guessing game, hoping that projection that you see in the future is one that leads him to where you think he could be. And I just think this guy's got too much God-given talent, too much God-given ability to come up short. And I like the pieces on this defensive line that they've added, which include Joey Bosa, as well as Michael Hecht, and as well as, the pieces to come, I think, in the draft. I think there'll be more additions. Ogunjobi as well. He'll be, out for a little bit on that suspension, but I really like that addition as well. So Greg Rousseau, I got him as a B+. I think the sky's the limit for the kid. 4 years in the league, drafted at the age of 21, signed in a long-term deal, really loves playing for the Buffalo Bills. So I'm really excited for him and happy that he was signed to I think a very fair extension, by the way. So far, just recapping here, 2018 first-round selection, Josh Allen, A+. I could put an extra plus, another plus on that pick if I so chose, but just to be literal, an A+ grade. Tremaine Edmonds, a B- grade. Ed Oliver, a B grade. And Greg Rousseau, a B+ grade, according to what I believe in the experience that they've played within the Buffalo Bills and where I think they can go as well. That has more to do with the plus side of things with one Groot, Greg Rousseau. So the 2022 draft. Now, this is where things kind of fall off the rails here for Brandon Beane. I want to go over the entire 2022 NFL draft class for the Buffalo Bills, okay? You start off with the first-round selection, Kaiir Elam. Second-round selection, James Cook. Third-round selection, Terrell Bernard. Fifth-round selection, Khalil Shakir. Sixth-round selection, Christian Benford, as well as Matt Ariza, who was picked prior to Benford, believe it or not. Luke Tenuta, offensive lineman. Balen Spector, linebacker. Now, Luke Tenuta, I am pretty certain that he did not make the final roster for the Buffalo Bills that season. He was picked up off the practice squad by the Green Bay Packers, then went to the Arizona Cardinals. Balen Spector, still a part of the Buffalo Bills. Matt Ariza was cut due to some off-the-field stuff, to put it mildly. But, man, rounds 2, rounds 3, rounds 5, picks 63, 89, and 148. You're talking about 3 starting players within one draft class, the second, third, and fifth round. But unfortunately, the draft class was marred by a pick that was a bad pick in hindsight by Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, and that is Kaiir Elam. This pick gets an F from me, and it's really harsh to throw out an F because I will kind of sugarcoat this F by saying that I think this was one of those situations where a team decides to take a player and he just did not fit the scheme for where he was drafted. Whereas 5 rounds later, evidently, and a lot of picks later, they take another player at that same position who fits that scheme like a glove, who they then, from the early on standpoint, as these guys were rookies, Benford shined and Kaiir Elam just never did. So I'm giving this an F because, this was a pick that it was well known who Kaiir Elam was. He was coming out of Florida, right? He's playing against the top of the heap in the country at the wide receiver position. The majority of the guys that Kaiir Elam was actually shutting down in college, right? Shutting down in college, were drafted in the first round of the 2021 or 2022 NFL draft, and in some cases, 2020 or even 2023, right? He'd played against the who's who in that conference nationally each and every week as a member of the Florida Gators. It's well known he was a profile man cover corner, whereas Sean McDermott's defense is more of a zone coverage defense. Christian Benford out of Villanova, a little longer, a little rangier than Kaiir Elam, dare I say a little thicker as well, but in terms of the physicality department, Kaiir Elam just did not fit what Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane wanted to do from the get-go. And I felt like they had a real shot to, make something out of nothing by getting rid of him sooner. By trading away Kaiir Elam sooner, I felt like they would have got a better return. Dare I say it, I feel like they might have held on to him a little bit too long to where they didn't get the proper return for a player that they picked with a top 20 pick. So 23rd overall, that was really unfortunate. If my memory serves me right, I believe they traded up a little bit to take him. I could go back and look at that. If I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. But this was a pick that was one that failed epically for the Buffalo Bills. Last game of the year, last season against the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was a trade up. Last game of the year between the Bills and Chiefs, Christian Benford goes down, and Kaiir Elam is just targeted, gashed. And this was a trade. This was actually Baltimore's original 23rd overall pick. Baltimore traded the 23rd overall pick to Buffalo in exchange for the 25th overall pick and a 4th round selection. So we gave up a 4th round pick to move up 2 spots to take this kid. It's not, it's not just a throwaway pick. That's a 4th round pick. Matt Milano was a 4th round pick. You never know what you're going to get in the middle rounds, but could be on the good end of the spectrum or not. And unfortunately, this pick really set the Bills back to the point where I think the top position for Buffalo to target is probably corner again in this draft, because 3 years ago they picked the wrong kid. So, and I think Kyrie Elam does have what it takes to be good in this league. I just don't know schematically. Well, I do know schematically he was not a fit here. I don't know if he'll be a fit in Dallas. Only time will tell, but I wish him the best. I really do. So we go forward here to the 2023 NFL Draft, and this was a pick that originally I was a little bit mystified by. Okay, I was a little bit confused by this pick when Buffalo made it because of who they already had on the roster. Okay, and who they have on the roster already at that position at that time, then and now I have a lot of belief in. He's somebody that I really, really like. But when the Buffalo Bills took Dalton Kincaid, it was well known that he was the best tight end of that class, listed by many, along with another tight end by the name of Sam Laporta, who was not picked long after Buffalo picked Dalton Kincaid in the 20s, 25th overall, moving up from 27 to 25, much like they did year before, moved up a couple picks to take Kyrie Elam. They'll move up a little bit. They'll trade a mid-round pick away to move up a couple spots. Notate that, draft nerds out there. What does Brandon Beane like to do? That's something that he definitely likes to do. So Dalton Kincaid at Utah was one of the most sure-handed tight ends in the league, looked at as a George Kittle, Travis Kelce type kid in this new age of the tight end position. Now, judging off of last season, I think Bills fans would say that this pick has not been what people thought it would be. But last season, to put it in perspective, Dalton Kincaid was playing through a ton of injuries and was not himself, right? Was simply not himself. But I will tell you that in his rookie season, which was 2 years ago, it was one of the best seasons that a Bills rookie has ever had. It was one of the best tight end seasons that a Bills tight end has ever had. 73 catches, 673 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Now, the second season, that is in 16 games, 11 starts. Now, second season, 13 starts, 13 games, 9 games started, 75 targets, 44 catches. So his catch numbers went down 29 catches from his rookie year, from 73 to 44. His yards went down a good 220, and his touchdowns remained the same. So the touchdowns didn't go up, the yards didn't go up, they went down, and the catch numbers went down. I guarantee you this, guys. If there's any pick that the Buffalo Bills have made in recent years that I am not worried about in terms of their future, in terms of their ability, it is this one. I have more faith in Dalton Kincaid now than what I did when the Bills drafted him, because at the time, I really didn't understand the pick, didn't understand the premise of going to tight end. That was something that then Bills offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey really wanted to do, but I have seen Dalton Kincaid at his best, and he is a weapon. He is a dangerous player to the opposition in this league. I think a lot of it has to do with physical, I don't want to say fitness, but physicality at the position, body extension, things like that, that I think fell by the wayside a little bit from year 1 to year 2 and are needed to be better in year 3. And Brandon Beane talked about it specifically. He said that we need Dalton Kincaid to get a little bigger. He's too thin, too wiry of a tight end out there to withstand the daily pounding at the position that the tight end takes. So a lot of factors in here that throw Kincaid under the bus by many Bills fans, but I'm not going to go there. I'm simply not. I think that Kincaid had a down second season due to injury. I know what he's capable of when healthy. He showed it to me as a rookie in this league, which is very hard to do, especially at the tight end position. Very hard to do. I can't think of a year where a tight end outside of Brock Bowers, outside of Dalton Kincaid, really took the game over. Rob Gronkowski, his rookie year wasn't his best season that he went on to have. Wasn't this barn burner year that people thought, but Brock Bowers did. But he was a top 10 pick. Sam Laporta did, but he was a top 35 pick. Dalton Kincaid, somewhere in the middle of that. They really believe in this kid, and I have full agreement that they should believe in him. Now, we turn the page here. Those are the rankings, the grades, rather, for the 6 first-round draft choices that the Buffalo Bills have made in the Brandon Beane era. And, I mean, to say that there's one F in Kaiir Elam, and there's a lot of B's on here, and there's one A+, means that Brandon Beane has done a pretty damn good job as the general manager thus far, drafting in the first round. There's a lot of great players in these middle rounds. Obviously, Osiris Torrance in the second, Dorian Williams in the third in 2023. Even last year, Dwayne Carter, Ray Davis, Cedric Van Pran Granger, really solid. A lot of meat on the bone with a guy like Javon Solomon, who was picked last year by the Buffalo Bills. And going to the 2022 class, James Cook, second round, 63rd overall. Terrell Bernard, third round, 89th overall. Khalil Shakir, fifth round, 148th overall. Christian Benford, sixth round, 185th overall. With those picks, you got the Boogie Bashams, you got the Cody Fords in the second round. You got the Gabe Davises in the fourth, which was a hit, but now he's not on the team. He's on the Jaguars. So, I think that there is a lot of mixed baggery here just due to the NFL being what the NFL is, but they hit on some picks. Those guys left. They had to refine those positions again. Gone were the days of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. They bring in James Cook to replace that tandem, and then Ray Davis shortly thereafter. So a little bit of it is choice of wanting certain players to stay, not wanting certain players to stay due to X, Y, and Z. But overall, I think Brandon Beane has done a pretty damn good job. Very curious to see, of course, what happens in the 2025 NFL Draft. So with that, I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast tonight. Take care. See you next Wednesday, and go Bills.